let me get into the topic. I was in two minds as to what to talk about, but I figured out after Maghrib, I'm going to actually talk about two topics and put them in one. So it's going to be two in one. And that's a promotion. I want to start with Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam. The story of Yusuf alayhi salam is very powerful. First of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dedicated a whole surah in the Quran for Surah Yusuf. There's nothing in the Quran that is exclusively, there's no surah in the Quran that's exclusively for one complete story. And the story of Yusuf occurs only in Surah Yusuf as a story. That's the only time it occurs. Whereas if you look at the story of Musa alayhi salam, it's all over the Quran in so many other surahs. And the story of Isa alayhi salam, the same in so many other surahs. So there is something special about Surah Yusuf and about the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, to the point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even says about the story of Yusuf, and in general Allah says, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Indeed, there are stories, in their stories there are lessons. There is ibrah. Ibrah. That's the Arabic word, ibrah. We translate it as lessons, but it's more than that. For the people of reflection, people of understanding. Now, ibrah in the Arabic language comes from the word abara, to cross over. Ibrah, cross over. Basically, when you cross over a bridge from one side to the other, that's ibrah, that's ubur. And the reason is, stories have symbolic power. So you can teach someone a lesson by telling them a story, and if they are able to figure out the lesson and then cross over into their life and apply the lesson to their life, that's ibrah. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, almost a third of the Quran is dedicated to stories. Why? Because stories teach us. They hit deep, they drive the point home. So the story of Yusuf alayhi salam is very powerful in the sense that it relates to the life of every one of us. Every one of us. And Yusuf alayhi salam went through a lot of traumas in his life, but he was not traumatized. He went through a lot of traumatic experiences in his life, but he was not traumatized. He went through a lot of down times, as we would like to call them, but he was happy and he was content. And he went through a lot of challenging circumstances, and instead of being broken down, he actually grew. He grew. And when everything seemed to be against him, the reality of affairs turned out to be for him. So things were happening for him, not to him. Not to him. And there are secrets why this is happening. There are secrets why this is happening. Surah Yusuf teaches us 3 secrets. 3 things that if we learn them, hold on to them and apply them, Surah Yusuf, or the story of Yusuf, can play again in our lives. The success of Yusuf alayhi salam can play also in our lives. And really these 3 secrets are the basic tools with which you can handle any situation in life. Literally. Islam was sent to be lived, by the way. Islam is not for us just to do certain rituals, certain prayers, and when we deal with real life, okay, let's get real and let's start dealing with the practical stuff. Put Islam on the side now. That's not why Islam was sent. Islam was sent for us to live this life fully, to understand it, experience it fully, and bring the best out of it. And in order for us to grow, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah summarizes the test of this life. He subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says a self or a soul that He created. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Allah inspired it, Allah offered it 2 ways. Both of them are available. Fujur, evil, and the way of wrong things. And taqwaha, also the way of taqwa, righteousness, and the right path. Both of them are offered, and humans can choose any one of them. Both of them are available. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala summarizes the test of this life by saying, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Allah says, he who makes tazkiyah of himself, which Allah has given us, Allah has given us ourselves, tazkiyah. Whoever makes tazkiyah of it, then he will be successful. He who ignores it and neglects it, doesn't take care of it, they will be the losers. As simple as that. That's the test of life. You want to be successful, you have to make tazkiyah of yourself. What is tazkiyah? In the Arabic language, tazkiyah has 2 primary meanings. First, at-tahara, purity, purification. Number 2, an-nama, growth, and development. So our mission in this life is to take our raw selves and do two things with them: purify them and grow them. So self-growth and self-development in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed is what Islam really is about. Really. So Yusuf alayhi salam, you will find through all the circumstances and the events that Yusuf alayhi salam went through, he was actually achieving these things by means of three tools that we're going to share. And these are the secret of Yusuf alayhi salam. Just in brief, first he was taken away from his father. By who? His own brothers. They conspired against him. They took him. They threw him in the well. They deceived his father. They played a game. He was left in the well. Then he was taken out of the well and he was sold as a slave. So from the son of a prophet who was promised prophethood into a slave. So he's taken by that caravan and he's sold in the slave market in Egypt. Not only a free man, but a prophet, or someone who's promised to be a prophet. And now he goes down into this cascade of negative events to the point where he loses his freedom, he loses himself. Slave means you don't own yourself, someone else owns you. You're a property. You're just like this, someone owns you. You don't have any choice, you don't have any say on your life. And he's taken to the house of Al-Aziz. Al-Aziz, sort of a minister in Egypt, a very important, influential person in Egypt, Al-Aziz. So he's taken, and he's still young. So he grows in this house as a servant and as a slave, who has no say, who has no choice. He just has to obey and do whatever he's commanded. Then when he becomes an adult, he's offered such a difficult and trying fitna. And what is it? The wife of his own master, who's also his master. She is his master. She commands him, he has to obey. She develops this affection and this love towards him, this physical attraction. She sets him up in a way, she invites him for fahisha, for zina. What does she do? She closes all doors and windows. She says, here you go. He's supposed to obey, he has no say. There's a power imbalance. It's not like, oh, no, I don't feel like it. Oh, I don't want to do that. No, you're my slave. You don't even have a choice. You can't even express yourself in this point. She commanded him, go ahead now. Still with this power imbalance, Yusuf alayhi salam, he's connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's connected to Allah. So he says, Ma'ad Allah. He says, I seek refuge in Allah. Innahu Rabbi ahsana mathwaya. Allah has been good to me. Allah has been good to me. I'm not going to violate the laws and the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he realizes that if he stays in that position, there will be a temptation. There will be the temptation of being a man, presented with a woman who calls him to herself. The temptation of him having less power in front of her and the pressure that she could exercise on him, all of this was a temptation. So he decided to get himself out of that. He rushes to the door. He finds his master by the door. Straight away she's caught now. She wants to free herself. She wants to pass the buck. She says, he was trying to rape me. He was trying to rape me. So he's accused falsely now. Yusuf alayhi salam speaks up for himself. And he says, no, it was her. So they call upon someone from her family, a wise man, let's find out, investigate what happened. And they found out basically it was her mistake because his shirt was ripped from behind. So she was chasing him. But they said, don't expose that, don't talk about that. This is the wife of this influential man, the wife of the minister. It's a political, slander now, there's issues. No, keep quiet about this. Yusuf alayhi salam, don't open your mouth. Then she's not done with him. She decides to take it on him, to take revenge. So she sets him up in the presence of other women because they were talking about her. The news seeped out into people. They started saying, oh, she is interested in her slave boy. This is the wife of Al-Aziz. Now, she said, and some women are very intelligent. They know how to stage things. So she decided to set them up together, Yusuf and the women. So she gets out of it. So she brings them, she offers them, they were preparing some food, they were using a knife to cut some stuff. She commands Yusuf to walk in front of them. He walks past them, they're taken by his beauty. مَا هَذَا بَشَرًا إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا مَلَكٌ كَرِيمٌ. This is not a human being. And the Prophet ﷺ, by the way, in his journey in Al-Mi'raj, when he made the Isra and the Mi'raj, when he ascended to heavens, he saw Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. He says, فَرَأَيْتُ يُوسُف عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ فَإِذَا هُوَ قَدْ أُعْطِيَ شَطْرَ الْحُسْنِ. Yusuf was given half of beauty. So some scholars who commented on this hadith, they said Allah created beauty for humans, certain type of beauty for humans. He gave half of it for humanity and half of it for Yusuf. So he was extremely handsome. So they saw him, they couldn't, they were taken by his beauty. So they were cutting some vegetables or whatever. They ended up cutting their own hands, their own fingers. And because of that, of their beauty, they were taken by the beauty, they didn't feel the pain. And by the way, this is a human experience. It's not unique to them. Literally, when our attention is taken by something, we can actually stop feeling the pain. And this is what they call pain suppression, by the way. Say pain suppression, if something can capture your attention so forcefully that it takes your whole attention, even when there is pain, you don't feel it. That's how we humans function. Take your attention away from the source of your pain, usually it goes down to a point where you don't feel it anymore, although it's there. So they weren't feeling it. And now they were talking about the wife of Al-Aziz. They are trapped and taken by the beauty of Yusuf. They are trapped now. So the news started spreading about them. They turned it against Yusuf that he's trying to, attract women. He's trying to set women up. So they said the only way to, deal with the situation is to get him convicted. If he's found guilty in the court, that means, yarhamukallah, if he's found guilty in the court, that means it's his mistake, all the other stuff is rumors, it's untrue. That's how they conspire against Yusuf and they send him to prison. Yusuf alayhi salam, he was saying, oh Allah, I prefer the prison to being in this fitna and trial. So he goes to the prison. Imagine someone who's been through all of these negative events, one after the other. They would usually turn to Allah, why me? Oh Allah, why does this happen to me? Why not someone else? You might not say it with your tongue, but as the Arabs say, بِلِسَانِ الْحَالِ لَا بِلِسَانِ الْمَقَالِ, right? That's what your heart feels, and it wants to say it, but you don't verbalize it. But you feel like, oh Allah, why me? Why does this happen to me? What did I do? Yusuf alayhi salam was not in that state. He went to the prison. He finds these two men as soon as and this shows as well, when you have goodness inside, by the way, when you hold to these three things that we're going to reveal inshallah shortly, this nurtures your heart. And when you nurture your heart, it shows on your face. Shows on your face. This is why one of the scholars had a beautiful statement. They said, الوجه يشرب من ماء القلب. الوجه يشرب من ماء القلب. They say the face drinks from the fountain of the heart. So what you have in your heart usually shows on your face. But most people don't pay enough attention to really see the reality of people. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, when he first came to Medina, some of the Jews went to see him when he was in Quba at the beginning, Masjid Quba, right? So when he was in Quba, first for 14 days before he moves into Medina, some of the Jews came to see him, leaders of the Jewish tribes. One of them was Abdullah ibn Salaam, one of the most learned scholar of the Jews in Medina at the time. So he came and he had heard that this man, Muhammad, was a liar, a charlatan, and so on and so forth. So he said, I wanted to see him. So he said, فَلَمَّا رَأَيْتُهُ عَلِمْتُ أَنَّ وَجْهَهُ لَيْسَ بِوَجْهِ كَذَّابٍ. He said, when I saw Muhammad, I realized this is not the face of a liar. This is not the face of a liar. So usually what people have inside usually reflects, but we need to pay attention. And that's what's called firasa. The Arabs call this firasa, a sense of intuition and insight into people. When you see them, you can tell who they are. Imam al-Shafi'i was very intelligent with this. He could see someone praying in the masjid, and he could tell which city he's from, why he came to this city, and what he wants, and what his profession is. He used to do this often. That's Imam al-Shafi'i, because he studied firasa as a science. He learnt it. He read the books, and he consulted scholars who understand this. So Yusuf alayhi salam, when he enters the prison, there are two other people. When they see him, they see the beautiful face. Not only the handsomeness of him, but the righteousness, the beauty, the piety, the sincerity. You can tell. This is not a liar. This is not a dodgy person. Straight away, they assume this is must be a man of knowledge. He must be wise. So they narrated their dreams to him. One of them said, إِنِّي أَرَانِي أَعْصِرُ خَمْرًا. I saw myself making wine. The other one said, إِنِّي أَرَانِي أَحْمِلُ فَوْقَ رَأْسِي خُبْزًا تَأْكُلُ الطَّيْرُ مِنْهُ. I saw myself in my dream having bread over my head and birds are eating from that bread. Yusuf alayhi salam understood with the interpretation of the dream. Don't forget, his first dream was interpreted by his father, and this was a promise of his prophethood. So before telling them about the dream, since these people are interested, he decides to tell them about something more important than their dreams. About Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Since they're open-minded, they're willing to listen to him, now it's time to tell them about Allah. Because these people don't worship Allah, they associate partners with Allah. So he starts telling them about Allah, that he's the only one who has the right to be worshipped. He's the creator, the designer of the universe, of everything. And we should worship him, he's alone, we don't associate partners with him. And he started speaking about them. Then he says, in the midst of all of this, imagine this predicament, this trial, he's put in prison unjustly, and in the first place he was taken from his father, all of these predicaments. Then Yusuf alayhi salam, what is he? He's so chill, he's so chill in the prison, he's not traumatized. If someone goes to prison now, and there's no real cause for his going to prison, they might lose their faith. They might question, why does Allah do this to me? Why does Allah allow this to happen to me? So Yusuf alayhi salam turns to them, telling them about Allah. Then he says, ذَلِكَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا وَعَلَى النَّاسِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. He's saying this is from the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us and upon people, but most people are unthankful. Man, you just put in prison and you're talking about thankfulness? You should be talking about oppression, right? We talk about oppression. We're oppressed, I'm put in prison unjustly. The case is all fabricated. So he should start speaking and making a case, right? You guys, we need to rebel, we need to do this, we're put in prison, it's injustice, we have to stand for justice. No, it wasn't about this, it was about Allah. He said, there's so many blessings from Allah upon us, but most of us are unthankful. Then he says to them, this is from what Allah taught me. ذَلِكُمَا مِمَّا عَلَّمَنِي رَبِّي. This is what Allah taught me. It's not my knowledge. It's not like, don't think it's my intelligence or my merit. That's something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Refer it back to Allah. Because truly we don't own that. Allah gave you that knowledge through people, through experiences. Whatever you have and whatever you claim to yourself is really a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want to be truthful about it, it's not about you. Even the fact that you pray in the masjid, you don't own that. Allah allowed you. Allah inspired you. Allah gave you the tawfiq to pray in the masjid. So don't ascribe anything to yourself. So Yusuf alayhi salam, after this he interprets the dreams for them, and he says one of you obviously will be crucified, then birds will eat his body. The second one he said, you will serve the king. And then he told him, remember me. And that shows as well, when you can use something, use a means to get somewhere, use it. Nothing wrong with that. You're putting your trust in Allah doesn't mean you do what you are supposed to do. You wanting to get your rizq doesn't mean you don't study, you don't get a profession, you don't get skills, you don't apply for jobs, or you don't make your own business. No, you have to do it. This is how the world works. Trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means you put in the work. But if you're not putting in the work, you're not trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're just fooling yourself. So then Yusuf alayhi salam, the man forgets, and Yusuf alayhi salam stays in the prison for so long. Then when the king has the dream, the guy remembers, he calls upon Yusuf, he gets the interpretation. Yusuf gives not only an interpretation, but a solution. Now with this solution, the king says, I want him for me. I want to see this guy. He refuses. He says, you need to clear me of the charges. I stand for myself. I stand up for myself. Clear me first of the charges. So they investigate, they clear him of the charges. He grows in the eyes of the king. This man is not so desperate to get out of prison. He's not so desperate to be close to the king. This man of principle. He is a man of principles. Yusuf, he's offered, I want you to be close. The king says, I want you to be one of my assistants. He asks for a position. He says, "Ij'alni ala khaza'in al-ard." Give me the treasury. Sort of minister of finance. Give me that position. Inni hafidhun alim. I am I'm a trustworthy person, hafidh, alim, and I have the skills and the knowledge. Isn't that self-promotion? Nothing wrong with that. If it's true, and you deserve that position, and you can actually do a very good job there, you should actually speak for yourself. Yes, but don't lie. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't be super extra righteous, where you put yourself down when you can do something good. That's an opportunity for him to be more influential. So he starts designing the whole financial system in a way to deal with the famine that was coming after that, 7 years. Then he deals with all of this. Then Allah brings his brothers to ask for help because they were in a drought. Yusuf and Egypt were ready for that. So now he has the power over his brothers. It ends up basically with his father and mother coming to Egypt, and then his dream becoming true when they all prostrate themselves before him, because at their time prostration was okay, was a sign of respect. But in our Sharia in Islam, it's haram, it's shirk. You only prostrate before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Yusuf alayhi salam, throughout the process, he maintained three things. And these three things are available to every one of us. And they're quite simple. They're quite easy. You will find Yusuf alayhi salam, first of all, is thankful. Throughout the way. ذَلِكَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا وَعَلَى النَّاسِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. This is from the great blessings of Allah upon us, but most people are unthankful, ungrateful. And he says, رَبِّ قَدْ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ. He says, oh Allah, you have taught me so much. And you have given me so much power and position. So he's thankful to Allah. Every time he's thankful. You never find Yusuf alayhi salam in his story complaining about things that happened. Why did they happen? Not at all. He doesn't even feel negative about them. He just feels optimistic. Why? Because he's been thankful. He's always thankful. Even the hardship is thankful for him. He's thankful in the hardship. This takes me to the second one. He's thankful when there is a blessing. Number two, when there is hardship and predicament, he's patient. No complaint in the whole surah. Yusuf alayhi salam doesn't complain. He doesn't even say to Allah, oh Allah, take these women. Why did you bring these women into my life to give me so much trouble? He didn't say that. He said, oh Allah, I prefer prison to these women. He didn't even object to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is his politeness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's patience. Shukr, sabr, and the third one was what? Taqwa. This is why when his brothers asked him, they said to him, they said, Tallahi laqad atharaka Allahu alayna wa in kunna lakhati'in. Allah has favored you up over us. When they figured out that Al-Aziz was Yusuf, and he has all this power, and this is the guy we got rid of, we thought he was dead, and now he is the Minister of Finance, and he controls the country. He says to them, إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِ وَيَصْبِرْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Whoever has taqwa and patience, Allah will never waste the efforts of the muhsineen. So these three themes are so powerful in Surah Yusuf. When there is hardship and challenges in your life, you need patience. Hold on to patience, beautiful patience. When there is blessings and ease, you are thankful, shukr. When there is obligations, you have taqwa. So do what you are commanded, be thankful for the blessings, be patient with the calamities and the hardships, and life would start working for you. Period. Life will start working for you. But the challenge is to have these three things in your life. It's challenging. When there's an obligation, you fulfill it. That's taqwa. When there's haram, you keep away from it. Taqwa. That's number one. Number two, because there's an expectation. But then life places a demand on you, an expectation on you. If it's a hardship and challenge and a misfortune, what do? Patience. When it's a blessing and ease and times of tranquility, you are thankful. You could use these in any situation in life and they will make things work for you. This is why some of the scholars said, and here where I come to my second topic, it blends in nicely with this, because I was going to talk about Al-Qadr, the Qadr of Allah. Oftentimes things happen in our life and we start saying, why does this happen to me? Or what does this mean? Maybe Allah is angry with me. Maybe Allah is not pleased with me. Or maybe I've done something wrong and now Allah is punishing me. I don't know, is this good or is this bad? We always have trying to figure out these meanings. Leave this for Allah. This is Allah's knowledge. This is Allah's knowledge. This is why Ja'far al-Sadiq, rahimahullah ta'ala, one of the grandsons of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu, he used to say, السعيد من انشغل بما أراد الله منه لا بما أراد الله به. He says the real ones who will be happy and successful on the Day of Judgment are the ones who keep themselves busy with what Allah wants from them. in terms of what Allah expects from them to do, obligations. Not the ones who are busy with what Allah wants to do with them. Sometimes we keep saying, but what does this mean? What does Allah want to do? What's going to happen to me? That's Allah's business. Don't get there. Leave it for Allah. The only thing you can do with regards to this is trust. Trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's nothing really that makes you more powerful than trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he says in Madarij al-Salikin, he says there are people who have high level of trust in Allah. High level of trust that these people throw themselves into great risks. And then he says, وَالتَّوَكُّلُ عَلَى اللَّهُ وَأَقْوَى الْأَسْبَابِ قَاطِبَةً. He says, and the strongest factor in life, consequential thing, force in life is trust in Allah. So he says, these people, their trust in Allah protects them from the risks they throw themselves into. Trust in Allah is not a mental concept, just a thought, just an idea. I trust in Allah. It's consequential. It puts this universe in a state of alignment that it helps you and protects you. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Hadith Al-Qudusi, the Divine Hadith, we all know that's reported by Al-Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ says, قال الله تعالى أنا عند ظن عبدي بي فليظن عبدي بي ما شاء. Allah says, I am to my servant as my servant thinks of me. Let my servant think whatever he wants of me. You think Allah is going to help you and protect you? You're truly sure about it, you're certain. Not like you're testing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out. Let me see if He actually protects me or not. If you're testing Allah, it's not going to work. You have to be trusting. You have to be trusting, and that's what faith is. So if you truly trust Allah, Allah will not let you down. He will not let you down. But the reason why sometimes we say, oh, I trusted Allah, but it didn't turn out to be what I wanted, is that we didn't really truly trust Allah. And we don't have enough self-clarity to actually recognize this. This is why the Prophet ﷺ says in the Hadith, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ لَوْ أَنَّكُمْ تَوَكَّلُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ حَقَّ تَوَكُّلِهِ لَرَزَقَكُمْ كَمَا يَرْزُقُ الطَّيْرُ تَغْدُو خِمَاصًا وَتَرُوحُ بِطَانًا. He says, by the one in whose soul my hand is. If you were to put your trust in Allah as He truly deserves, then Allah would provide for you as He provides for birds. They leave their nests in the early morning with empty stomachs, they come back full. Another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, ادعوا الله وأنتم موقنون بالإجابة فإن الله لا يستجيب دعاء من قلب غافل لاهٍ. Call upon Allah, make dua when you are in a state of certainty, موقن, yaqeen, certainty. You have no shadow of doubt about it that Allah will answer this. Because Allah does not answer the call or the dua of a heart that is ghafil. Ghafil, basically ghafil of the power and the might of Allah. It's heedless. It's not really, the heart is not there in terms of trusting Allah and realizing that Allah takes care of everything. So He's heedless of that fact. The heart is heedless of that fact. So really we fail ourselves. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu has a beautiful statement. He says, إني لا أحمل هم الدعاء إني لا أحمل هم الإجابة ولكنني أحمل هم الدعاء فإذا ألهمت الدعاء كانت الإجابة معه. He says, when I make dua, he says, I don't really worry about the answer of my dua, because I know the answer is there. But what my concern is, my dua. My dua. Is it a real dua? Am I really making dua in a state of certainty? That's what he's saying. That's the meaning, paraphrasing what he says. This is why he says, then after that, he says, فَإِذَا أُلْهِمْتُ الدُّعَاء. So if I am inspired the dua, basically if I'm in a state to be inspired to make the right dua with the right state of heart of certainty, he says the answer is there. The answer will be granted straight away. So his concern is my dua. Does it qualify as dua or not? Am I trusting of Allah or not? So before we turn to Allah and say, oh, Allah doesn't answer my dua, we should turn to ourselves. This is why Al-Hasan al-Basri, one man came to him and he said, you said trust in Allah, give, مَا نَقَصَ مَالٌ مِّن صَدَقَةٍ. He said, the Prophet ﷺ says, you give from your wealth and it will not decrease your money. Your money, your wealth will not decrease. He says, but I do this and money goes down. I lose money. It decreases. So Al-Hasan al-Basri said, it doesn't. It doesn't, but you have to give with certainty. عَلَيْكَ أَن تُعْطِي بِيَقِينٍ. You have to give when you are in a state of certainty that Allah is not going to reduce your money. So he told him, tonight give for the sake of Allah, and I'm going to give for the sake of Allah. So that night both of them gave for the sake of Allah. A few days later the man comes back to me and says, listen, my wealth went down by that value. I gave $10, I have $10 less than what I had previously. Hassan al-Basri said, Wallahi, I got something else that came to me after I gave that sadaqah that night. Is Allah playing favors here? No. Hassan al-Basri said, ولكنني تصدقت يقينا أو تصدقت إيمانا وأنت تصدقت اختبارا. I gave sadaqah out of faith in Allah. My money is not going to go down. You gave money, you're testing Allah. You want to see if my money is going to go down or not. And that's what you get. Scary. It's scary, but we don't pay attention to ourselves and we always expect, things are not going well just because Allah doesn't answer our dua. But the truth is Allah answers our dua. So I'm not sure if we have time. Oh, we still have time, right?
Take a break if you want. It's 9:30. It's 8:30 now.
9:30, mashallah. طيب. So let me just share this thing about Al-Qadr. Ubadah ibn Samit, the great companion, radiyallahu anhu, when he was dying, he was on his deathbed, his son comes about. And he sees his father, he realizes his father is going to take his last breath soon. So he says, Ya abatah awsini wajtahid. He says, oh my father, give me an advice and put your heart in it. Give me a good advice. So he says, Ya bunay. He says, إنك لن تطعم طعم الإيمان. إنك لن تطعم طعم الإيمان حتى تؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره. He says, oh my son, you will never taste real iman until you believe in the qadr of Allah, the qada and the qadr, the good and the bad of it, خيره وشره. So he says, فكيف أعرف خير القدر من شره. So the son asks, how do I know the good of qadr and the bad of qadr? How do I know that? He says to him, تعلم أن ما أخطأك لم يكن ليصيبك وما أصابك لم يكن ليخطئك. You know what comes to you, it was meant to come to you. There was no way things could be otherwise. And whatever missed you, whatever you missed, was not meant to be for you. So تعلم أن ما أصابك لم يكن ليخطئك وما أخطأك لم يكن ليصيبك. So that's you figure this out. فإن أول ما خلق الله القلم فقال له اكتب فكتب ما هو كائن إلى يوم القيامة. The first thing Allah created in the creation was Al-Qalam, the pen. Allah commanded it write, and it wrote down everything that was going to happen till the day of judgment. Till the day of judgment. That's Al-Qadr. Basically, you believe with certainty that what happens was meant to happen. What doesn't happen was never meant to happen. So the Qadr is basically the decision of Allah. Allah decided that this thing happened, this is why it became a reality. Nothing happens without the permission of Allah. So Allah allowed this thing to happen and Allah wrote this thing to happen. So it happens. And where do most people go wrong with Al-Qadr? Say, yeah, whatever written is written, we just say it as a statement. But we have to figure out that this has to be in your heart, first and foremost, that you truly believe. He said that you will never find the taste of Iman, the sweetness of Iman, until you believe that whatever came to you, whatever happened to you was meant to happen. Was never meant to happen, was not going to happen regardless of how much you wish. Because we have two things. We have the decision of Allah and the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have on the other side our expectations. We have our plans. So I wish, for example, that this project works out. This is my wish. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has another plan. Now when the project doesn't materialize and Allah's plan becomes real, because it's always going to come real, if I still hold on to my wishes, I'm gonna struggle. That's resistance. That's resistance. Because what I'm saying, oh Allah, I think my plan is better than your plan. It should have happened. That's what you're saying. You're not saying it with your tongue, but in your heart, Allah doesn't allow anything to happen except with wisdom and mercy. So Allah chose something to happen. He could have chosen something else, but He did not. He chose this to happen. Now, you wish that reality went some other route. You wanted something else to happen, but it didn't happen. But you still hold on to this against the wish and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's where the pain comes from. So basically, reality, even when it doesn't happen the way we want it, is not painful. Reality is not painful, I'm telling you. We can deal with any reality as humans. The pain comes from the fact that we are resisting Allah's qadr. We're resisting Allah's plan. We're not happy with it. We're saying somehow, my plan would be better than this. You see the point? That's where the pain comes from. So if you manage to get to a point where you develop enough trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you hand your affairs over to Allah, so whatever comes about, oh Allah, that's your word has come true. I'm gonna give up on my plans because they didn't materialize, okay? My wishes, I'm gonna give up on them. I'm gonna accept reality as it is, as Allah's qadr, Allah's choice. That doesn't mean if there is a sin that happened, there's a calamity that happened, you don't have issues with it. A sin happens, you're not supposed to be happy with it. It's a sin. You're supposed to hate it. But you have to come to grips with the reality, it's a fact. And I have to accept it as a fact. Don't live in denial. That's what we mean. So this is why there's a proverb among the Arabs, the older Arabs. They used to say, إِن لَمْ يَكُنْ مَا تُرِيد فَأَرِدْ مَا يَكُنْ. If what you want doesn't happen, then want what has happened. Do it the other way around. If what you want doesn't happen, see what happened and want it for yourself. You will stop that resistance. And all of a sudden things become easy. There's a high level. Scholars call this maqam al-rida. Maqam al-rida. You're pleased with Allah, whatever He brings about. And by the way, it's not an obligation. Scholars have disputed, is al-rida with hardships and calamities, is it an obligation or is it a recommendation? They say most of them say it's a recommendation, but it's a very high level. If you manage to get there, you don't want to make something else. It's high level. Sabr is an obligation. You're patient. Something you don't like it, but I'm going to be patient. I'm not going to say anything against it. I'll try my best to live with it, but still I have this resistance towards it. I'm not pleased with it. I'm not happy with it. But still, I'm not going to say anything wrong. I'm not going to do anything wrong. That's patience. But al-rida, you move beyond that. You transcend reality. And this is why Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, لَقَدْ أَصْبَحْتُ وَمَا لِيَ رِضًا إِلَّا فِي مَوَاطِنِ الْقَدَرِ. He says, I've reached a point in my life where I wake up in the morning and I have no pleasure except in what Allah brings about, in what Allah writes to happen. So he's not even approaching life with a preconditioning that, some wishes that I want this, I want that. No, he's open to Allah. Not everyone can reach that, by the way. And if you try to reach it when you're not ready, you'll get yourself into so much trouble. But this is a high level of spiritual growth where a person is so connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they can actually reach that level naturally. You can't force it. You sort of promote yourself and you peacefully, transition into that. When you connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you develop so much trust about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you recite the Quran is in your heart, when you do all of these acts of worship, and especially the acts of worship that pertain to the heart. Oftentimes we pay a lot of attention to external acts of worship, but we have to keep in mind that the most important acts of worship are what's in the heart. So when you're performing your salah, the state of your heart is very important, not the state of your body. The state of your body is important, you have to perform your salah. But what's the state of your heart? That's where salah really is. That's where salah really is. This is why some scholars have disputed, some of the Shafi'i scholars have disputed, they said, well, if someone doesn't have khushu' in their salah at all, is their salah valid or not? Do they have to repeat it? Alhamdulillah, the majority of the scholars say no. Salah is accepted, is valid, but there's no much reward. Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says you have to repeat your salah if there's no khushu', if there's no mindfulness, like if you're not there. You have to repeat it. That's his opinion. So, so we have to pay attention to the state of our hearts as we give in charity, as we help out other people, as we pray our salah, as we recite our Quran. It's about the heart. And that's what we have to pay attention 2. So again, let's summarize and recap. So the story with Yusuf alayhi salam, really the most powerful 3 tools that can help you deal with any situation in life is what you find in Surah Yusuf. And these are the 3 secrets of his success. Why things turned out to be for him, to work for him. What seemed to be against him was actually turned out to be for him. So the fact that he could not become in such a position of high power had he not been kidnapped by his brothers and thrown in the well. It wasn't going to happen. If he was not taken as a slave, he would not meet the king and be in the prison and given that exposure. It would not. But Allah makes the whole world conspire, come together to serve him, even when it seems to be against you. These are the 3 things. Shukr. And we don't do enough shukr. We don't do enough thankfulness, grateful. We don't do enough. We live in we're drowned in blessings from Allah, but we struggle to find something to thank Allah for, because we don't do enough of it. And by the way, there's a secret in suluk. Some of the scholars say, many people say, I'm going through hardship and I try to get so much sabr and patience, but I have a limit. Do you know what's the secret to developing high levels of patience? It goes against conventional wisdom, goes against our gut reaction. You want to boost your level of patience so when you can handle more hardship peacefully. Do more shukr. Do more thankfulness in your life. Surprisingly, when you do more shukr and thankfulness in your life, you'll actually find that you have much more patience within your capacity, and you will be able to put up with more things. So you want to expand your capacity as a human being, do more shukr, and you will be surprised how much willpower you develop, how much patience you develop, how much resources you develop. Counterintuitive. So the more thankfulness you do, the more mindful you are of the great things Allah put in your life, the more patience will come about so naturally to you. You don't have to push yourself into patience. That's a big secret. So shukr, sabr, patience in the face of calamities, and basically dutifulness, taqwa, doing what you are supposed to do, the haram and the halal, being a dutiful, obedient servant. Stick to these things, you can survive any situation in life. It will turn out to work for you. So the statement that I was going to quote, but I sort of got distracted away from it. Some scholars say, the Qadr of Allah is happening. وَلَا مُبَدِّلَ لِكَلِمَاتِ اللَّهِ. Whatever Allah wrote is going to happen. The words of Allah are powerful. They're going to be a reality. You can't change them. What can you do? They say there are 2 sides to Al-Qadr. There's the right side and there's the wrong side. You choose where to place yourself. You choose where you place yourself. You believe in the Qadr of Allah and sort of accept it as a reality and hold on to these 3 things that we mentioned. You place yourself on the right side of Al-Qadr, so everything that happens works for you. Where do you find this? You find this in Sahih Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith, there are many wordings of the hadith, I'll choose one wording. The Prophet ﷺ says, لا يقضي الله لعبده المؤمن قضاء إلا كان خيرا له. There is nothing that Allah decrees, nothing that Allah allows to happen in this world, except that it is good for the believing servant. It's good. Why? Because a believing servant puts himself on the right side of Al-Qadr. That's the active side of Al-Qadr. It starts working for you. Even though it sounds to be a calamity, hardship, predicament, things are falling apart, you're losing everything, you'll realize things will turn around, will just work for you, unexpectedly. Salman al-Farisi, radiallahu anhu, when he left his father who was a worshipper of the fire, these Persians, and he moved with some Christians in Sham. And he figured out, that priest that he was learning from was taking the money for himself, the donations for himself. He was holding so much gold and silver. When he died, he told them, why do you guys honor him? He was, taking all the money you donated for himself. They said, how come? He said, I'll show you where his treasure is. So they go where he hides his treasure and they find all of this wealth. So they crucify the body and they stone it. Then another priest comes and he's very righteous. Salman al-Farisi says, I've never seen a man as righteous as this person. And I kept studying with him until he died. He was about to die. I told him, where should I go when I learn more? He says, I only know one person, and he's in Al-Mosul, North Iraq. That's the only person I know who's upon the truth now. Because the religion has changed. The religion of Al-Masih alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam has changed. But these were upon probably the remains of the truth. So he went with him and he spent time with him. He learned from him. And that person was about to die and tells him, I just came to you. I was referred to you by your friend. Where shall I go now? I want to study more. He says, only there's one man in Busra. In Busra. So you go to Busra. So after he dies, he goes to Busra, and so on and so forth. Then he goes to Amuriya, another city which is in Turkey today. Then basically, when his last teacher is dying, he says, where should I go now? He says, Wallahi, oh my son, inni la a'lamu ahadan ala wajhi al-ardi ala ma kunna alayhi illa ana. He says, I'm the last one that I know of that's upon the truth. There's no one I can recommend or I can refer you to. What should I do? He says, but it's a time for a prophet to be sent. It's in a city, he describes to him a description that is close to Medina, than the land of the Arabs. So he decides to go to the land of the Arabs, but he waits for an opportunity. So he works and he gets some sheep and some cows, and then he finds a caravan from the tribe of Banu Kalb, some of the Arabs, and he said, you guys, I want to go to the lands of the Arabs. He gave them a description. They said, yeah, we'll help you go to the lands of the Arabs, to the Hijaz, where Medina and Khaybar and Mecca is. We'll help you go there. And he says, I'll give you some of my sheep, some of my cows. But they set him up on the way. They take his sheep and his cows and they take him as a slave, the same as Yusuf alayhi salam. So it's turning to be against him. And where do they take him? They take him to Khaybar. In Khaybar, he's sold to a Jewish master and he works with him. But when he sees the date trees, he says, okay, that's fine, probably that's good. But his master sells him to his cousin who was in Medina, in Yathrib at the time. So he's sold, and he's now, when he sees Yathrib, he says, عرفتها بصفتها. I recognize the description, that's the city. And that's the time, just before the time the Prophet ﷺ made hijrah to Medina. That's the time. So even though he was taken as a slave, his money was taken, but it was all for him. It wasn't against him. Seemingly it's against him. But when you are on the right side of Al-Qadr, things are going to work for you. What seems to be a loss will be an advantage, will be a win for you. Why? Allah works in subtle ways. That's why in Surah Yusuf, Yusuf alayhi salam, was it Yusuf alayhi salam who says, Inna Rabbi latifun lima yasha. My Lord is latif. Okay, let me test you Arabic. Arabs today, latif. How do we translate latif today? The general usage of today? Okay, that's the proper meaning. I'm not going to expose this. Latif, we usually use it as what? Today. This guy is latif. Soft, nice, kind, gentle, right? This is correct meaning. But the real meaning is subtle. Subtle. Allah works in subtle ways you can't figure out. You think you're outsmarting Allah, but all of your wins are a loss if you're against Allah and you don't realize it. And you're with Allah, whatever seems to be a loss is actually a win. And Allah is just planning for you. And Rabbi Latif, Allah is so subtle in how He gets what He wants done. So basically the point in this lesson is always place yourself on the right side, the active side of Al-Qadr. Not the inactive or the wrong side of Al-Qadr, where basically you don't have trust in Allah. Why does this happen to me? Oh, things are just going to fall apart. Then that's exactly what's going to happen. You choose for yourself. Things will be against you. Who chooses? You choose. Allah gave you the choice. Honestly, Allah gave you the choice. Whatever happens in this life has so many meanings, by the way. A calamity could be a blessing. When can you tap into this blessing in the middle of calamity? When you place yourself on the right side of Al-Qadr, the active side of Al-Qadr, which is trusting Allah. Thankful, patient, and dutiful. Taqwa. So the world is so mysterious. The world is so mysterious. I read a few years back a story of a nurse who was working in a hospital. She wrote a book about this. Then she was laid off. She was dismissed. We don't have any positions anymore this year. We're doing a lot of layoffs. You don't have a job for us. She was turned redundant. No job for you. She was supporting her two, father and mother, two parents, disabled. She had no other source of income. She doesn't know how to do anything else. She said, I lived in so much misery for a year, blaming everything that was happening to me. Then guess what? 3 years after the date she was laid off, she writes a letter to the general manager of that hospital. And she says to him, I can't thank you enough. She's writing from a financial empire that she built within 2 years. She started a business after a year of despair and pain. She started a business and she figured out she had a head for business. She built a beautiful business. In 2 years, she became a multimillionaire. So she says to her previous manager, I can't thank you enough. Had you kept me in the hospital, I would still live hand to mouth, month to month. But without you giving me this opportunity, I would not have been so rich now. It's trusting in Allah that can open these things for you. So don't take things, usually reality is unfinished business. Allah gives you the choice how to finish it. It's a raw material. What seems to be calamity, what seems to be a blessing, it's all raw material. How you deal with it, that's going to finish it into its final shape. So if it's a blessing, if you are thankful and grateful and dutiful, it will turn out to be a greater blessing. If it's an obligation and you take it and you stay obedient to it, then it's going to give you more power, Allah's going to give you more. If it's a hardship and you remain patient with it, Allah is going to turn it into a blessing. How? In ways you don't know. Allah, Inna Rabbi Latif. Allah is subtle in His ways. Allah doesn't have to reveal His secrets to us, so we start believing in Him. That's what belief is. It's a leap in faith. Because our hearts, in our fitrah, we trust Allah already. But sometimes we overthink it. Prove it to me, yarhamukallah. Prove it to me. We're just saying to Allah, prove it to me so I can believe in you. Isn't that rude? Isn't that rude with Allah? And by the way, miracles are happening every day. Everything about us is a miracle. Everything about us is a miracle. Everything around us is a miracle. But we just got so much used to it, we take it for granted, we're desensitized. But the heart knows that you can trust Allah and things will turn out to be for you. So I've spoken, I think, enough now. So I'm going to open the time for questions and answers. Questions, answers, anything.
Back to that point you mentioned about Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah, that he woke up and he was expecting.
عمر بن عبد العزيز. نعم. أصبحت وليس لي رضا إلا في مواقع القدر.
If you reach that point, that means you really ignore your life completely, no wife, no kids.
Interestingly not. No, interestingly not. It's a good question. So let me just sort of say it on the mic. When Umar ibn Abdul Aziz says, I reached a point where when I wake up in the morning, I have no desire in anything except what happens. So I'm sort of open to what Allah brings my way. It might give the impression that you don't have an interest in anything, you don't take an initiative or anything. But the reality is not. The thing is, when you tap in your trust to Allah, okay, your approach to the world stops coming from your mind, it starts coming from your heart. Look at the Prophet ﷺ. No one had a level of trust in Allah as the Prophet ﷺ. But he would take precautions. In the Battle of Uhud, he put on 2 armors. He would take all the precautions. When he made hijrah, he planned it very well, so carefully. But he was not acting like us from a position of desiring and fear. No, he was doing it from a position of trusting. So there is something we can't claim about trust unless we are there. When you are there, a new part of yourself, and that's basically your heart, will start inspiring you to action, but effortlessly, without effort. That's the catch. That's the catch. But we are so used into trying to get things done. We want so much control that we have to do everything, right? That we don't realize there's another system that could work. If you put your trust in Allah, there's another part of you that's activated your heart where it gets you to action. And you never sit back. And you can't even settle. But it's not an action is done frantically. I want to do this, I have to do this, I have to. No. It's so smooth and so natural that gives it so much power. So you will be guided. And that's what ilham, basically, inspiration is called. You'll be guided. And that's the meaning of the hadith also. Another divine, the same hadith. The end of the hadith that we quoted where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِي. Am I to my servant as he thinks of me? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا زَالَ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ. And my servant still seeks nearness, closeness to me by doing extra acts of worship. And this doesn't mean only external. The heart is the most important. حَتَّى أُحِبَّهُ. Until I love him. And Allah loves, that means the person has reached a high level. فَإِذَا أَحْبَبْتُهُ كُنْتُ سَمْعَهُ الَّذِي يَسْمَعُ بِهِ. If I love him, I become his hearing with which he hears. That's what Allah is saying. وَبَصَرَهُ الَّذِي يُبْصِرُ بِهِ. And I become his sight, his eyesight with which he sees. وَيَدَهُ الَّتِي يَبْطِشُ بِهَا. And his hand with which he acts. And his legs with which he walks. وَرِجْلَهُ الَّتِي يَمْشِي بِهَا. You reach that state where Allah guides your hearing. Allah guides your sight. Allah guides your action. Allah guides. You feel carried to do things. So that's what happens at high levels of connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and trust. But the problem is we don't give ourselves enough opportunity to really trust Allah, so we tap into that other side of who we are. Yeah. So I hope that answers it. But it's a good question, definitely a good question, yes. Okay, that's a good question as well. If things are decided by Allah, so why? It's not my responsibility. Whatever happens is written by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if I'm meant to do a sin, it was meant. It's not mine. If I'm meant to go to the hellfire, this is what Allah wrote for me, right? But I believe we answered this because the qadr, we said, the qadr is always unfinished business. We decide where we end up, on this side or that side. The qadr is happening. Even a sin, even a major sin. A major sin could get someone who treats it well. I fall in a sin, let's say. And it's a major sin. If I treat it well, and if I put my trust in Allah and I want to go back to Allah, this sin could be the reason I end up in paradise. It gave me enough motivation to make my way back to Allah. It gave me so much pain. It woke me up that I did so many things to make it back to Allah. Someone else might not respond to this in the same way. Well, a sin, if it's just a sin, I made it, it was written upon me, they'll do more sin and they'll end up in the hellfire. Same thing, same qadr happened. But we said, it's not you don't have a choice. You have a choice. Are you on the active side of al-qadr, on the inactive side? Or the right side of al-qadr, or the wrong side of al-qadr? This is where you place yourself. So Allah being Lord of the worlds, Rabbil Alameen, He's the one who decides.
Allah knows that which direction you will take.
Yes, Allah knows, but He gave you the choice. Which direction you go. And Allah's not going to do, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَظْلِمُ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ. Allah does not do injustice even by an atom's weight. So, basically some people ask this question, they want to know. It's easy to know. The qadr is happening, you choose where you want to put yourself. But if they still insist that I would do this sin, well, sin is not the end. Sin is not the end. An act of righteousness is not the end. The calamity is not the end. As we said, all this is unfinished business. It's left for you to put the final touches and decide which direction things are going to take. Allah gave, and this is part of the meaning of the word Khalifa. The angels, they don't have any choice at all. They don't even come up with an initiative. لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. They just obey. That's it. That's all the angels do. So they have no choice. So this deterministic approach applies to them. But Allah gave humans, and everything in the world, by the way, just obeys Allah. The only things that are given choice are humans and jinn. Mankind and jinn. Allah gave them choice. And that's the meaning of the word Khalifa. One of the meanings of the word Khalifa. Because Khalifa, someone you entrust with something. When you entrust, it comes with a responsibility, right? You give someone freedom, trust. The other side of it is responsibility. So basically you're responsible. So where people end up in paradise or the hellfire, it's definitely their choice. Absolutely. This is why the Prophet says, كُلُّكُمْ يَدْخُلُ الْجَنَّةِ إِلَّا مَنْ أَبَى. Everyone's going to end up in paradise except those who refuse. So if someone says, if I end up in the hellfire, and this is what Allah wrote for me, okay, basically, This is an incorrect notion, because you don't know. How do you know that Allah did not even write you for paradise? The problem is, if you have decided that Allah wrote me for the hellfire, so you're going to make choices now based on this conclusion. Then you made a choice. You just have to wake people up to the fact that you're actually making a choice in a subtle way, but this is a mental game or a mind game that you're playing. Oh, if Allah wrote everything. Allah wrote everything, but we don't know what Allah wrote.
There is another thing, Shaykh, that there are sometimes the area you covered, the blind faith in Allah, having blind faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like there are some brothers, they will say, you know what, okay, I totally understand, go and jump from the 16th floor. Allah will protect you, Allah will save you, right? So of course you have to use your brain, right? Because you go and jump, then you die.
Yeah. Basically, let me just repeat the question so everyone hears it. Some people say that, okay, blind faith, on purpose I don't use blind faith because faith is not blind. I said a leap in faith. A leap in faith. So faith is not blind. Real faith is not blind. So somebody might say, okay, there's blind faith. Just put your trust in Allah and jump off that tower and just Allah is going to save you, you will be saved. Okay? The thing is, if you truly reach a level of certainty, which most people are unable to, and you do that, nothing would happen to you. I know this doesn't make sense in the physical world, but this actually happened in the history of Islam. And we Muslims are not supposed to do it. You're not supposed to do it. But what I'm saying, in cases it happens. Khalid ibn al-Walid, radiyallahu anhu, when they dealt with the Rome, and there was a discussion between him and the leader of the Rome, the Byzantines, and he said basically about belief in Allah, and you guys said if you put your trust in Allah, nothing's going to happen. And so he said, if that's true, and this was a position where everyone was watching, and there was an opportunity for the Byzantines to really embrace Islam. So he said, if you truly show me how your trust in Allah will save you, if you consume this poison, then we would believe in you. Everyone agreed. Khalid ibn Walid drank that poison. Nothing happened to him. Are we supposed to do this? No. We're not supposed to do this. But unless you have a faith like Khalid ibn Walid. Yeah. So what we're saying, Islam doesn't invite us at all to do anything that's detrimental to our health, physically, mentally, emotionally, at all. But if humans are able to tap into their spiritual side, to the point, by the way, faith is not blind, the mind is blind. Faith is a function of the heart, not the mind. It's a function of the heart. And we know Allah in our hearts. But the problem with people who really question faith is they want mental conviction. They want to see a proof. They want to see Allah. That's the only way they can believe in Allah. But that's not faith. That's not faith. That's intellectualism. Faith is a function of the heart. And the heart is a completely different sense. Is the heart more certain than the mind of Allah? Yes. Why? Because the heart knows Allah. This is why when the prophets were sent, in Surah Ibrahim, when the prophets were sent to their people, and their people challenged them, the prophets were, Afillahi shak? Is there a doubt that Allah is there? Like, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So, if humans were, if they give themselves the opportunity to look into their hearts and investigate what's in their hearts, they would know for sure and with certainty that Allah is there and He deserves our worship more than I know that this is in front of me. Spiritual knowledge is much more powerful than mental knowledge. But we don't give ourselves that opportunity to tap into that side of who we are. If humans allow themselves to really figure out their hearts, you would have certain knowledge of Allah that's more certain than things you see and things you touch. And I'll give you scientific facts to show you that what we know with our mind is actually might not be true. Might not be true. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says, وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ, this life is only an enjoyment, a mirage. It's an imaginary mirage. In the last 100 years, quantum physics or quantum mechanics has developed big time. So I'm just want to quote one of the pioneers in quantum physics, Max Planck, who was a contemporary of Einstein and Bohr and all these founders of the quantum mechanics. When he was nominated for the Nobel Prize, and he actually received it, in that ceremony in Stockholm, in Sweden, he made a speech and he said, as someone who has devoted his life completely for hard-headed science, for facts, for physical facts, I can say with conviction that there is no matter as such. The world as we know it is not made of matter. So in quantum mechanics, really, they say there's no matter. And if you delve deep into, this is made of molecules, right? Molecules are made of atoms. We all know the atoms. They dig deep down, try to find out what the atoms are made of. They're made of subatomic particles. So most of the atom is space. Most of it is space. There's nothing. Literally, it's space. So what about the subatomic particles that seem to be the physical parts? These are the basic physical parts. What are they? Subatomic. Neutrons, electrons, protons, okay? So they try to figure out, go deep down and see what these are made of. So when they, with these quantum microscopes, where they could actually, see into these small level, tiny, unimaginable tiny level, they figured out electrons. When they tried to figure out electrons, there's nothing. So they figured out there's something called quarks. Quarks. These are the basic material of electrons and neutrons and all subatomic particles. So when they tried to find out these quarks, they couldn't find them. It's called string theory in quantum mechanics. They couldn't find them. So they figured out what these quarks are made of. They call strings. These are energy. And it's not energy that you can actually define or locate. It's potential energy. So they ended up, there's no material, there's no matter. This is why there are some scientific theories that come from this. So there is like the multiverse theory as to explain reality at a quantum level, and there is one of the theories that says the world is a hologram. What's a hologram? Hologram is a replica of reality. It's just it's like you can replicate three-dimensional person. It's only an image, but three-dimensional image. And it sounds so real. So they say we live in a physical hologram, that even our sense of touch is part of a hologram. So, but the reality, there's nothing. It's scary. But that's basically what we know, what we're so sure about, that what we can feel and touch and see is not what it seems to be to us. So this is why there is a... So there's a theory actually in cognitive psychology, and that's very interesting. There's a guy, he's still alive. Let me just finish this and I'll get to your question. He says, basically things are not what they seem to be. So he has a theory, he calls it the interface theory. He basically says, like your desktop, he says when you see, for example, what is the bin where you trash your recycle bin? He says it looks like a bin there, and it's somewhere on your desktop. He says, does it really look like this? No, it doesn't look anything like it. It's all numbers and digits, right? 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. And it's not even there. It's in your motherboard. But he says it's a convenient way to put it. When you drag an item and place it in your recycle bin, it's not actually this distance. There's a completely different process behind it, but it's just very convenient. It makes sense. He says the world that we live in is just a convenient, the way we see it is just a convenient way to deal with it, but it's not reality. It's scary. So what I'm saying is that even what we know at an intellectual level with our senses is not actually as it seems to be. So what we seem to be sure of, actually we shouldn't be so sure of. But we're so much trapped in our senses. But the reality is, what our hearts know is much more powerful and profound than we could possibly know with our minds. But we don't give our hearts a fair chance to really figure out what we know. So I'm done. That's it. What was your second?
They call it God particle.
They call it what? God party? God pardon? Particle. The God particle. Okay, they're trying to figure out this kind of, at the subatomic level. The God particle.
This concept you touch,
Yeah.
it's, there is no material,
Yeah.
right? So it is totally against like Islam.
No.
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 What do you think?
No, in Islam we live in a physical world and we relate to it in a physical sense. We just go about this world this way. But the thing is, we realize there's alam al-shahada, the world of the seen, wa alam al-ghayb, the world of the unseen. So we use our mind to relate to the seen world. So don't jump off a cliff and say there's no real world, you're going to die. Don't do that. Don't drink poison, you're going to die. Live in this real world. But you have to recognize there's an unseen world that my five senses cannot comprehend. The only way to connect to it is through my heart. The only thing I can know about it is through revelation, what Allah told us in the Quran and the Sunnah. And that's it.